peaceful afternoon at the pool suddenly turned into a tense confrontation when a white woman called 911 on a black man, all over a simple dispute. At first, it seemed like just another case of someone questioning whether a black person belongs in a space. But what happens next will leave her, and everyone watching, completely speechless. The call was made with confidence, the accusations were firm, and the woman truly believed she was in the right. But as the truth came out, the tables turned in a way no one saw coming. Was she prepared for the reality she was about to face? Not at all. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments, have you ever seen a situation like this happen in real life? And don't forget to like and subscribe for more eye-opening stories. As the woman speaks firmly into her phone, reporting the black man to 911, the pool area that was once filled with laughter and splashing water turns tense. Parents glance over, children slow down their play, and murmurs spread among the other guests. The afternoon sun still glistens on the water, but the atmosphere has shifted. At the center of it all is Jordan, a well-dressed, confident black man who had been enjoying his afternoon by the pool. With a relaxed demeanor and a quiet strength in his expression, he watches as the woman waves her hand, gesturing toward him as she speaks to the operator. He doesn't react with anger or panic, just a calm patience, as if he has seen situations like this too many times before. On the other side of the confrontation is Karen, a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and an air of entitlement. Her face is filled with irritation as she grips her phone tightly. In her mind, she is protecting the rules of the community pool. To her, Jordan doesn't look like he should be here. She isn't interested in asking questions. She has already made up her mind. The setting is an upscale private pool in a gated residential complex. The clear blue water sparkles under the sun, and families lounge under umbrellas, sipping cold drinks. The faint smell of sunscreen and chlorine lingers in the air. It's a place meant for relaxation. Yet right now, all eyes are locked on the scene unfolding near the entrance. Jordan had arrived earlier that day, dressed in casual swimwear, greeting the staff politely, before settling into one of the shaded lounge chairs. He had been looking forward to a quiet afternoon, catching up on a book and taking a dip in the cool water. But that peace was quickly disrupted when Karen approached him with crossed arms and a suspicious glare. "Excuse me, do you even live here?" she had asked, her voice sharp. Jordan had simply looked up from his book and raised an eyebrow. "Why does that matter?" he had replied, his voice polite but firm. That response clearly wasn't what she wanted to hear. "This is a private pool," she snapped. "If you don't belong here, you need to leave." Jordan, still calm, had simply smiled. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." But Karen wasn't satisfied. Instead of asking more questions or considering that she might be mistaken, she had pulled out her phone and dialed 911. Now, as she speaks with the dispatcher, insisting that Jordan is trespassing and refusing to leave, the tension in the air thickens. Some of the other pool-goers exchange uncomfortable glances, while others silently watch, waiting to see what happens next. Jordan exhales slowly, his patience unshaken. He knows something that Karen doesn't. And when the truth comes out, it's going to change everything. As Karen continues speaking into her phone, the entire pool area is now watching. Some people look uncomfortable, while others pretend not to notice. The water splashes have died down, and the lively chatter has been replaced by murmurs. Jordan, still sitting calmly, watches her with measured patience. He has dealt with situations like this before. And though he wishes things were different, he knows this is about more than just a pool dispute. Karen paces near the pool's entrance, her voice rising. "Yes, I'm at the community pool. and there's a man here who refuses to leave, she says into her phone, glancing back at Jordan with a mixture of frustration and confidence. No, I don't think he lives here. He won't even tell me his name. Jordan finally stands slowly, stretching his arms as if completely unbothered by the situation. I don't need to tell you my name, he says, keeping his voice steady, because I'm not breaking any rules. Karen scoffs. Oh, so you think you can just do whatever you want, she snaps. This is a private community. I live here. I pay my fees, and I won't let people who don't belong take advantage of what's not theirs. A few people shift uncomfortably at her words. Some nod in agreement, while others exchange uneasy glances. A woman sitting by the pool whispers to her husband. She didn't ask anyone else if they live here. Jordan takes a deep breath and shakes his head. Let me get this straight, he says, looking directly at Karen. You saw me, a black man, sitting by the pool, and instead of minding your business, you decided I must be trespassing. Karen rolls her eyes. Oh, don't try to make this about race, she huffs. This is about the rules. The rules? Jordan repeats with a smirk. Then why haven't you asked anyone else for proof that they live here? Karen hesitates for a second. Just a second. But it's enough. The murmurs grow louder. The doubt creeping into the faces around her tells her that some people are starting to see what's really happening. But she doubles down. Look, I don't have time for this, she says, flipping her hair over her shoulder. The police will handle it. Jordan exhales slowly, shaking his head. He had hoped she would realize her mistake before it escalated this far. But some people refuse to see beyond their assumptions. Just then, the sound of an approaching siren fills the air. The tension instantly spikes. Karen folds her arms, looking smug, while Jordan remains completely still. A police car pulls up near the entrance. 2 officers step out, scanning the situation. One of them, Officer Daniels, walks straight toward Karen. Are you the one who called? He asks. Karen nods quickly, pointing at Jordan. Yes. He refuses to leave. I don't know who he is, and he won't tell me where he lives. He's trespassing. Officer Daniels turns to Jordan, his face unreadable. Sir, can you tell us what's going on? Jordan lets out a small chuckle and shakes his head. I think I'd rather wait until you finish your investigation, he says, his tone polite but knowing. Daniels frowns slightly but nods. All right, let's figure this out. He gestures toward Karen. Do you have proof that he's trespassing? Karen blinks. Well, I mean, he hasn't told me where he lives. The officer sighs. Ma'am, that's not proof of anything. Karen's confidence falters just slightly. She wasn't expecting this reaction. Meanwhile, Jordan's calm expression doesn't change. He already knows how this is going to end. The crowd leans in, waiting for what happens next. The woman who had been whispering earlier shakes her head. She's about to regret this, she mutters under her breath. The officers pull out a notepad, ready to check the facts. But what they're about to find out will change everything. The tension thickens as Officer Daniels flips open his notepad, glancing between Jordan and Karen. The other officer, a younger man named Officer Reed, steps forward as well, his eyes scanning the pool area. Karen, still brimming with confidence, crosses her arms. So? Are you going to ask him for ID or what? She demands. Officer Daniels sighs, his patience already thinning. Ma'am, making a claim like this without evidence isn't enough to detain someone. Do you have proof that he doesn't belong here? Karen scoffs. Proof? What else do you need? He won't say where he lives. Isn't that suspicious? Jordan, still composed, chuckles softly. So, let me get this straight, he says, his voice steady. I'm guilty because I refuse to explain myself to you. You called the police because I didn't jump to prove my innocence. Karen rolls her eyes. Oh, stop acting like a victim. I have every right to ask questions. Officer Reed finally speaks up. Actually, ma'am, you don't. This is a private pool, but unless there's a written policy stating residents must verify their address to other residents, you don't have the right to demand anything from him. Karen's face twitches with frustration. So what? Are you just going to let him sit here? He could be anyone. Jordan finally sighs, rubbing his temple. He could have ended this earlier. He could have shut Karen down the moment she questioned him. But no, he wanted her to dig her own grave. He reaches into his pocket, pulling out a sleek key fob and holding it up between two fingers. The moment Karen sees it, her expression falters. The murmurs from the crowd grow louder. A few people exchange knowing looks, while others shake their heads in disbelief. Jordan smirks. Do you recognize this? Karen blinks, trying to recover. That doesn't prove anything, she says, but her voice wavers. Jordan chuckles, standing up fully. You're right. Let's make sure. He turns to Officer Daniels and gestures toward the gated entrance of the pool. You see that? He asks, pointing to the security panel next to the entrance. This key fob only works for people who have the right to be here. Without breaking eye contact, Jordan walks over to the gate, taps his key fob against the scanner, and within seconds, the gate unlocks with a loud beep. The silence that follows is deafening. Karen's face turns red. She opens her mouth, but no words come out. Jordan turns back around, shaking his head. You were so sure I didn't belong here, he says, his voice calm but firm. And yet, here I am, with access you don't get unless you live here. The officers exchange glances, and Officer Daniels sighs heavily. Well, that settles that, he mutters. He turns to Karen. Ma'am, you called 911 for nothing. This man clearly has the right to be here. Karen takes a shaky breath, scrambling for a way to save face. I just thought... Jordan tilts his head. You thought what? He asks. That I didn't look like I could afford to live here? That someone like me must be an outsider? Karen's lips part, but the words don't come. The crowd watches, waiting for her to admit what they all know. This was never about the pool. Officer Reed shakes his head in disappointment. Ma'am, we're going to have to document this incident as a false report. If you do something like this again, you could face serious consequences. Karen's face turns pale. Wait, what? False report. But I really thought... Daniels interrupts her, his tone sharp. You thought wrong, and you wasted our time. Karen stumbles back, suddenly realizing how badly she is miscalculated. People at the pool are whispering, shaking their heads, some even recording her reaction. She was so sure she was in the right. But now, she's the one under scrutiny. Jordan, watching her squirm, lets out a slow breath. Next time, he says, his voice smooth but unwavering. Maybe start with questions, not assumptions. Karen looks like she wants to disappear. Without another word, she grabs her pool bag, turns on her heel, and practically runs out. The moment she's gone, a few people clap. Others walk up to Jordan, shaking their heads. Man, that was ridiculous. One guy mutters. She really thought she was the pool police. Another woman sighs. Jordan simply smiles. But behind that smile is a tired understanding. This wasn't the first time something like this happened, and it probably wouldn't be the last. But today, he won. As the officers prepare to leave, Officer Daniels looks at Jordan. I'm sorry this happened, he admits. Jordan nods. It happens, but next time maybe ask questions before assuming the worst. Daniels hesitates, then nods in understanding. Fair point. As the police leave, the tension in the pool area finally lifts. People return to their chairs. The kids splash in the water again, and the normal sounds of the afternoon return. Jordan sits back down, reaching for his book. This was supposed to be a relaxing day. Maybe now it finally can be. As Jordan settles back into his chair, finally ready to enjoy his day, a few pool-goers approach him. Some apologize, others shake their heads in disbelief at what just happened. But Jordan, calm as ever, simply waves it off. He knew this moment was coming. One man, an older resident named Mr. Harris, leans in. "Son, I'm real sorry about that. Some people just can't help themselves." Jordan chuckles, setting his book aside. "It's not the first time, Mr. Harris, and honestly, probably won't be the last." Just then, a woman in a staff uniform walks over, glancing nervously between Jordan and the remaining guests. "Mr. Walker," she says, adjusting her name tag, "I just wanted to check. Do you need us to file a formal report about the incident?" A few people overhearing freeze. "Mr. Walker?" Karen, who had not left completely but was standing near the exit still listening in, suddenly stiffens. She turns, her face already pale from the humiliation she just endured. Jordan sighs and shakes his head. "No, Michelle, that won't be necessary. But do me a favor. Make sure we send out a reminder to all residents about what happens when someone makes a false police report." Michelle nods. "Absolutely, sir." The sir makes a few more heads turn. The whispers start again. Who is he? Karen, still rooted in place, suddenly has to know. She steps closer hesitantly, her voice almost unsure for the first time. "Wait, why is she calling you Mr. Walker?" Jordan looks at her, tilting his head slightly. "Because that's my name." The silence is deafening. Karen stares, her mind racing. She had assumed he was just another resident, maybe even a guest. But now there's something more. Something she didn't see coming. Jordan finally stands up, dusting himself off. His calm expression never wavers as he looks her straight in the eye. "Karen," he says smoothly, "I own this property." Her eyes widen. What? Jordan crosses his arms. "I'm the owner of this entire complex. Every building, every unit, including that private pool you thought I wasn't supposed to be at." The entire pool area falls into stunned silence. A few gasps escape from the people still nearby. Even Officer Daniels, who is finishing up his report, raises an eyebrow. Karen's face drains of all color. That's not possible," she stammers. You're lying." Jordan smirks. "Oh? You can go check the HOA records if you'd like. You'll see my name listed as the primary owner and investor of this entire community." Karen physically stumbles back. The humiliation she felt earlier was nothing compared to this. "Wait, so you live here?" she asks weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. Jordan lets out a short laugh. "I don't just live here, Karen. I run this place." The weight of his words crushes her. She had spent all that time demanding proof of residency, treating him like he was an outsider, when, in reality, she had been talking down to the very man who had the power to kick her out. A few people start whispering again, but this time it's filled with disbelief and amusement. A woman near the poolside mutters, "She just tried to police the guy who owns the whole place. That's karma." Karen's mouth opens and closes, but nothing comes out. Jordan, satisfied, steps closer, lowering his voice so only she can hear. "You made a scene," he says, his tone still smooth but laced with something sharp. "You called the police. You humiliated yourself. And for what? Because you saw a black man and assumed he didn't belong?" Karen swallows hard. She has no defense. "I?" She tries, but even she doesn't know what to say. Jordan nods, as if he expected this. Exactly. With that, he turns and walks away, leaving Karen standing there, completely speechless. The officers finish their paperwork, and before leaving, Officer Daniels gives Karen one last look. "Next time, ma'am, maybe think before you act." The crowd begins to disperse, but the impact of what just happened will linger for a long time. Karen doesn't just feel embarrassed. She feels small. She knows she can't take back what she did, and she knows she will never live this down. Meanwhile, Jordan? He sits back down, picks up his book, and smiles, because today, justice wasn't just served. It was earned. As Jordan settles back into his chair, the sun casting a warm glow over the pool, the weight of the moment still lingers in the air. Karen, standing frozen in place, her face still pale from the revelation, is unable to move. Her own assumptions had led to this moment, her public humiliation, her undeniable mistake. She looks around, realizing the pool-goers aren't just whispering anymore. Some are shaking their heads in disappointment. Others, barely hiding their smirks, whisper to their companions. The realization hits her like a wave. She isn't the victim here. Slowly, she turns to Jordan, her voice much smaller than before. I didn't know, she says, her words stumbling. Jordan, who had been casually flipping through his book, doesn't even look up. Didn't know what? He asks, his tone cool but firm. Karen swallows hard. That you owned this place. Jordan finally looks up, his dark eyes locking onto hers. He tilts his head slightly. And would that have changed anything? Karen stammers. I mean, if I knew, I wouldn't have... Wouldn't have what? Jordan interrupts, his voice even but sharp. Wouldn't have assumed I was trespassing? Wouldn't have treated me like I didn't belong? Wouldn't have called the cops over something that wasn't even your business? Karen opens her mouth, but she knows she has no defense. Jordan leans forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Let me ask you something, Karen, he says, voice calm but piercing. When you first saw me sitting by the pool, did you question if anyone else belonged here? She doesn't answer. She doesn't need to. Jordan lets out a small, humorless laugh. That's what I thought. The officers, who had been standing nearby finishing up their paperwork, exchange glances. Officer Daniels, the senior of the two, takes a step forward. Mr. Walker, do you want to press charges for a false police report? The question makes Karen's head snap up. Wait, what? Press charges? She stammers, panic flashing across her face. I didn't... Jordan exhales, shaking his head. He stands up, dusting off his shorts. No, he finally says, looking at the officers. I don't need to do that. Karen releases a shaky breath of relief. But, Jordan continues, turning back to her, I do expect something else. Karen stiffens. What? Jordan crosses his arms. An apology. The crowd, which had quieted down, leans in slightly. Everyone knows this is the moment Karen has to face reality. She shifts uncomfortably, looking down. I just thought, no, Jordan cuts her off, and no excuses. Just own it. Karen's lips press into a thin line. She hesitates for a few seconds, but finally, she nods. Taking a deep breath, she forces herself to look at Jordan. I'm sorry, she says, her voice barely above a whisper. Jordan waits. His silence makes it clear that a weak apology won't cut it. Karen swallows, then finally speaks with sincerity. I was wrong to assume you didn't belong here, she admits. I shouldn't have called the police. I let my own bias take over, and that wasn't right. The pool area falls into silence. Jordan studies her for a moment, then nods. Good, he says simply. Now, do better. Karen, ashamed but understanding the weight of her actions, nods. Without another word, she gathers her things and quietly walks away. The officers finish their report, give Jordan a respectful nod, and leave. The crowd slowly begins to disperse, but the lesson of what just happened stays. A woman from the poolside, who had been watching everything, approaches Jordan. I just want to say, you handled that with a lot of grace. Jordan chuckles lightly. Did I? Because I really wanted to go off. She smiles. Yeah, but you didn't. And that's the part she'll remember. Jordan glances toward the pool gate where Karen had just exited. Will she actually learn from this? He doesn't know. But maybe, just maybe she will. As he sits back down, he feels the weight of every other time this has happened in his life. The assumptions, the stares, the moments where he had to prove himself in spaces he already belonged to. This time, at least, the truth was undeniable. But he knows this isn't just about him. This is about a system that lets people like Karen act on their biases without fear of consequence. It's about every black person who has been questioned, doubted, or made to feel like they have to prove their worth in places where they shouldn't have to. It's about what needs to change. Jordan lets out a deep breath, flipping his book back open. His relaxing day had been interrupted, but at least now there's a little more awareness in the world, a little more accountability, a little more proof that times are changing. And for now, that's enough. As Jordan finally relaxes by the pool, the echoes of what just happened linger in the air. The people who witnessed the confrontation won't forget it anytime soon. Neither will Karen. She walked away in silence, but the lesson was clear. Assumptions have consequences. But this isn't just about one woman's mistake. This happens every day. In stores, in neighborhoods, in workplaces, black people being questioned for simply existing in spaces where they belong. So now, the question is, what happens next? Think about it. Have you ever seen something like this happen? Have you ever spoken up when it did? What would you have done in this situation? The truth is, change only happens when people are willing to face their biases and do better. It's about questioning the assumptions we make and choosing to see people for who they are, not who we expect them to be. If this story made you think, share it. Let more people see what happens when assumptions go unchecked. And if you believe in standing up against these kinds of injustices, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Because conversations like these, they matter. Thank you for being part of this journey. Stay tuned for more powerful stories that challenge perspectives and inspire change.